So here's our agenda. Again, my name's Phil Unger for anybody that hasn't met me in the past. So this is the welcome piece. I'm going to turn it over right away here to Jade to talk about the highlights in Spotfire 10.9. We're going to tell you a little bit about the progression. So depending on where you are with your current version, we can actually show you what's been added for about the last 3 or 4. And then at the end, I was just going to talk, Jade's going to talk about Spotfire training, and then we're going to talk a little bit about the 10K Digital Transformation Challenge just at the very end. And if you have questions along the way, hopefully everybody goes on mute. I'll be monitoring the chat as well, and we'll have a Q&A at the very end. So with that, Jade, I will turn it over to you.
Thanks, Phil. Now one more slide here.
Oh, yes, yes.
You want to talk to that?
Yes, I will. Sorry, jumped ahead. So this is really just to say we're going to talk. There's 2 more slides actually. We've been partners with TIBCO for about 8.5. Well, it's over 8 years, 8+ years. So for the Western Canadian territory, for everybody that's here from West, we are the elite partner here in Canada. Talking about, you'll see this on the next slide. If you go to the next slide as well, Jade. Specializing in what's the analytics space as well as what's called Unify. So I guess it's analyze and unify, I think, are the 2 pieces that they talk about. So Cadeon, for anybody that hasn't worked with us in the past, we're about 13 years old as of August. We've been reselling for, like I said, 8 years, working in all of these areas, 100+ customers in the history of the company, basically specializing in data analytics consulting, training, but enabling self-serve BI and analytics. And we have people located in 3 different locations, Calgary being head office, 1 person in Toronto and 1 person in Denver. So there's the 2-minute infomercial on who we are. Now I'm going to turn it over to Jade.
Now on to Spotfire. Thank you, Phil.
Thank you, Jade.
So if you guys haven't met me, I'm Jade. I live in Calgary, and I've been with Cadeon for almost a year. I've been working with Spotfire with the product in primarily the oil and gas sector for about the last 5 years, doing lots of consulting and training services for Cadeon now. I wanted to show you guys the latest release of Spotfire and talk about some of the new features that have been added in the last couple of months. So Spotfire tends to release a major update every quarter or so. The last update, 10.9, came out just 1 month ago, like exactly a month ago. So probably expect a newer version in another 2 or 3 months. But since the last half year to a year, these have been the major updates that have been added. So we started with 10.6, where streaming analytics was added into the web player so that you can stream your data, and the people with consumer licenses can see that as well. They also added a streaming demo, which I'm going to show you guys in a moment, and that's embedded into the Spotfire analyst. So you can just open it up like any sample analyses and see a streaming example. Then in 10.7, they added native support for Python data functions. So previously you could write all your data functions using R, but now you have the capability of doing so in Python as well. Then 10.8 came out, and the toolbar from version 7. For those of you who have been using Spotfire for a long time, you'll definitely remember the old user interface, and you could use the toolbar to select different visualizations to drop in, and there were a lot of handy buttons out there. But then they got rid of it, scrapped it all in Spotfire 10. So you had to use 2 clicks or 3 clicks rather than the 1 click to get it. But now they've added it back as per popular request. And last but not least, 1 month ago in the latest release, Spotfire added the ability to have shared dual scales. This request was actually the most upvoted, longest outstanding request in the TIBCO Ideas portal. So people really, really wanted this, and it's finally come out, and I'll get to show you guys today. In each release, it's not just one feature that gets added, but there are tons of other little updates as well. So here's a shorter list of some of the other things that got added in 10.9, which I will also show a few of. So in addition to dual scales, you can move all your scales to the right side of a visualization. You can include labels from a secondary data table. If your labels are not really readable, and you can just bring in another table and connect it like you would for any column match or plotting data from another table. The map chart legend now only shows entries that are on the visible layers. So if you have a layer deselected, that part will not appear in the legend. Zoom visibility has been added in the business author version. So it doesn't mean that Zoom can see your Spotfire. It just means that when you're zooming in on your map, different layers can be visible at different levels of zoom. And this was already available in Analyst, but now they've added it into Business Author, which is like the web version of Analyst. From data wrangling, there were a few more useful additions as well. There is the recommendation for data cleansing to trim any white spaces. So any trailing or leading spaces that have been accidentally added in, it just cleanses up your data for you. You also get the option to not automatically add all of the columns when you're bringing in a new table. You can pick and choose from the start. The data canvas also had a few more updates, so it will highlight any data that has been added in on different operations and steps. So when you add in a table or a column or rows or calculated columns, each of those steps will highlight what data has actually been added in. So it lets you see the operations more easily. And being able to add a calculated column or hierarchy is now available directly from the data canvas. From the administration side, there were also a few more upgrades. Postgres and Microsoft SQL Server 2019 are now supported as Spotfire databases, and there were a few improvements to some Spotfire connectors, such as towards Oracle, Teradata, and BigQuery. So with that, I will show you guys some of these features in Spotfire. Let me open this up. So from the beginning, when 10.6 came out like half a year or so ago, they added in this new really cool race car demo. So if you were to open up your Spotfire Analyst and you saw your home screen and you had your sample analyses at the bottom, they have this streaming race car demo added directly in here. So you can open it up right from here. And this visualization is inspired by TIBCO's collaboration with Formula One. So you can see there's like a race car going around a track here. And at each point in time, it's measuring the acceleration, the speed, tire temperatures, brake temperatures, and plotting them in various visualizations. But what's super cool is that it looks like everything is animated. So the data is streaming directly from TIBCO's servers right now. Which is it's just on loop, so they can have this demo running, but you can see the streaming ability in Spotfire with everything moving around. From 10.7, when they added in Python data functions, to access that, just as you would add a regular data function under tools and register data function, you now have the option of toggling between R script and Python script. So you can use all of those cool Python packages out there on the internet and incorporate them into your Spotfire analyses. As for 10.8, the toolbar got added in. So up top, you'll remember these few icons here on the right side that were here prior to 10.8. But now if you right click on this bar, you can customize the toolbar and bring in all of your visualizations, even the ability to rearrange your visualizations quickly. So all of the buttons that you loved from Spotfire version 7, these can be added back in at your will. So I love having this, especially the reload data button. That's my favorite one to have. I miss that. And having a save here, because sometimes I forget to save and I like being reminded for that. Then when 10.9 came out, the biggest addition was the ability to add shared dual scales. And I'll show you what I mean here. Let's say you have a visualization like a combination chart. This also works for bar charts and line charts. Let's say you have a combination chart and you want to do a simple plot such as comparing your capital spending and comparing it against your production in oil and gas terms. So here I put together some random data, and you can see if I want to have my bars here, my bar chart section, be the budget capital spending and the actual capital spending. And I want to obviously compare the two against each other. Prior to version 10.9, this was actually really difficult to put together. It wasn't seamless. Every single column that you had in your visualization would actually have its own scale. So you see I have a blue, a red, a green, and a yellow scale on the right side. So I have 4 different scales now. But obviously from the left side with budget capital spending and actual spending, I want these two to be on the same scale so that they're actually comparable. And same with the right side with my actual production and my production forecast. I want these two values to be comparable with each other. So now in Spotfire 10.9, I can go to the properties of this visualization under the y-axis. And instead of using multiple scales, I now have the option of selecting dual scales. And this lets me choose which columns I want on the left and which columns I want on the right. And it consolidates the 2 scales on each side. So now my spending is comparable from budget to actual, and my production is also comparable from forecast to actual. Everyone was waiting for this for a long time. I think this was sitting in the ideas portal for like 4 years, and thank God it's finally here, and I love it. On the same note, you can move all of your scales to the right side of the visualization as well. So here I can go to the properties, again under y-axis, and at the bottom I can move this scale that I currently have on the left to the right side. It's just an aesthetic choice that has also been made available now. I'll also show on this example the ability to use the data cleansing recommendation. So if you take a closer look at the visualization I'm showing here with my bar chart, there are a few entries on my category axis or my x-axis that are similar to each other. I have 2 red rocks and I have 2 rest havens. The reason for that is that there are spaces either before or after. So there was a data entry issue when this data was put together. And Spotfire is now able to detect that and quickly trim those white spaces. So if I go to my data panel and I select the column in question, you'll see this new recommendation here to remove extra white spaces. So I can click on this, and it simply applies the trim aggregation onto this column so that I can consolidate those areas that have duplicates as a result of data entry errors. Another feature I'll show has to do with the map chart. So I have a visualization here with a couple of wells on a map. There's a bunch of layers, so I have boundaries, I have some quarter section grids, and I have a WMS layer as well, which generates an entry into the legend. So let me zoom in on my data. I can see that I have 4 different layers, and I have these in my legend as well. But in 10.9, if I don't like this WMS layer, I don't want to look at it, when I deselect it from my map chart, it also removes it from the legend. So I don't get to see that information and become confused by it. So any layer that I deselect also gets deselected off of the legend, which is a nice, definitely a nice to have. And let's say your data, in this case, my wells here, if I zoom in a little bit further, you'll see these little colored lines. These lines represent horizontal wells that have been drilled, and you're seeing it from top down. I have these 5 wells here with their UWIs. But let's say if you wanted to show the name of the well or some other information related to these wells, but that information is not in the shapefile that you're using to plot it on your map. You can actually have the legend change, and every time you display the UWI somewhere, you can actually have it show a label from another table. So let's go to my data panel again and make sure that I'm under the well trajectory data table. Under the column UWI, which is what I'm currently coloring by on my map chart, I can find in the details a new section called display values. So instead of displaying the UWI, I can move to another table that I have and choose to display something else. So I can choose to display the well name from another table. And you see that immediately reflected on the map, on the legend. So that helps you not have a lot of duplicate data. Rather than having to add rows from something else, you can just use this feature. And to set that up, it's the same as having the ability to plot data from one table with another. You have to make sure that you have an appropriate column match set up under your data table properties. So here, if I select my table that I'm grabbing this information from, I have to make sure that there is a column match for it, so it knows which data to show. And lastly, I'll show on the data canvas side of things that when you add something to your data table, such as adding columns here, when you click on that operation, add columns, you'll see in the data preview that it highlights the columns that have been added in, which is really handy when you're going back in here to figure out what has been done to put together the data set. Same with any calculated columns that have been added. You just click on the specific operation. This calculated column here has been added, and you'll see the data preview go right there and highlight it for you. Also, you can add the calculated column and the hierarchy directly from the data canvas, which I really like because it clears up the confusion of where calculated columns actually go. So I've seen in a lot of cases where people want to add a calculated column, but they think that it's going in a different location in the order of operations on your data canvas. But having it on your data canvas itself shows that this is something that gets added in the last step. So I love that these new features have been added into 10.9. It's definitely my favorite release right now and the one that I'm currently using all the time. So there's other features that I didn't talk about, and there's always new things in Spotfire. So if you guys have questions about anything, feel free to ask. Feel free to ask in the chat and also at the end of our presentation. I'm just trying to go back to me present from here. I also do the training program here at Cadeon too, and I teach all of those Spotfire courses. So please attend training if you have any additional questions and you want to learn more about all aspects of Spotfire. We offer an introduction course that's half a day, which is really good for anyone who is just getting exposed to data analytics or to using Spotfire as your analytics tool. So it covers a lot of the basic features, how to utilize markings and filters in the best way possible and set up your data sources. The Spotfire Fundamentals course is our most comprehensive course, and it covers pretty much everything up until the point where you have to code or script or write something that's not really natively built into Spotfire. So this is good for anyone who's been using Spotfire for even a few years now. you can always take it, and I'm guaranteed that you'll learn something that you did not know before. For those Spotfire administrators out there, those who are handling access to data on the IT side of things, we also have courses for Spotfire administration and connecting your data using TIBCO data virtualization. We have 2 courses on that as well. All right. Phil, on to you.
Yeah, you bet. Just check a time here, 11:25. We started a little bit late, but one real quick thing. Just go to the next slide, please, Jade. Sorry, I'll come back on video too. So, hey, listen, Spotfire, just to kind of show you where it fits in what we do here at Cadeon, helping our customers with their digital transformation. I mean, it really fits in this first bucket, what we call visualize and analyze. We have customers that actually are on this call that are in the virtualize place as well, which also touches on the diarize. So if you go to the next slide, for anybody that hasn't worked with Cadeon before, we have one little challenge for you, because we know times are tough. We're through the COVID quarter. Hopefully things are opening up here, and what we put together for this, you could almost call it the COVID challenge. We'll do a 5-day proof of concept with you, and we'll bring the software to the party. You don't have to pay for that. We'll train one person, and we'll connect to a couple of your toughest data sources, and we can do that in 5 days. And if we don't do it for the 10K, our Cadeon services are free. So there's the challenge to anybody that hasn't worked with Cadeon in the past. So if you have questions around that, you can reach out to the same email address that I've posted in the chat, which is info@cadeon.com. So Jade, move to the next slide, please. It's time for Q&A. We did have a couple of questions here that I'll just read out to you.
Okay.
Jim Zhang has been active in our chat here. Thanks, Jim, for all the questions. Question number 1 is, data functions require users to click trust functions when they first open the file the first time. Is there a way to disable this?
There is no automatic trust all functions right now. So that is still something that you have to do when you have scripts. And so that has actually been submitted into the ideas portal, and I know it's under considerations, but it's currently not available right now.
Hey, this
Jade,
is Jim here, actually. Sorry to bug in. I'm with Incana, or formerly Incana, and then now we're called Oventive. I think we're also a customer of Cadeon as well.
Yep, I've done training with you guys before.
Yeah. So one of the things I do is I build a lot of dashboards for management, and the most common issue I get from them trying to open up these dashboards is that particular thing, because they can't visualize anything that uses a data function, because they don't, you don't expect
opening it
to be able to click trust functions.
Are they opening that in the web player though, or are they opening it in Spotfire Analyst?
In Spotfire.
In the Analyst,
not the web player.
Here, not the web player.
So your executives have access to Spotfire Analyst? Is that what you're saying, Jim?
Lower level managers.
Oh, lower level. Sorry, I heard executives, and I was like, oh, wow, that's pretty cool.
So when they go in here and there's a data function, they're not able to trust it?
They would have to click it, and often, these are not people that work with Spotfire every day in, day out.
So they get confused.
Yeah, so it's easily like a few hours turnaround or a couple of days turnaround for me to help them see what the issue is. It could be as easy as just clicking that, but yeah.
Yeah. When you're in the Spotfire Analyst, you will have to select Trust All, and it doesn't automatically trust them. That option has not been made available yet. In the web player, that can be averted, though.
Okay, thanks.
And I guess, Jim, the question would be is maybe if those people that have access to analysts that aren't, up to speed on the capabilities of Spotfire, maybe the web player / consumer license is what it's called today, is maybe a better choice for them. And that might divert some of your trouble in the future.
Yeah, the reason we use data functions is we're accessing data from sources that I don't think Spotfire has existing APIs to connect to, such as blob storage. So we use our functions to pull data from blob storage, and and pull that data into Spotfire, which is why they when they first open up that dashboard, they're not going to see any data if they don't click the trust all.
Got it. But is that something that you're creating for them and they're just viewing?
Yes. So we're starting to migrate a lot of stuff into cloud, and the Blob is one of the storage facilities we use. And just if Spotfire at some point can actually connect to Blob directly, then we can completely omit this issue.
Well, let us take that away and get back to you. I have your contact information in the Evite or Eventbrite, I should say. But yes, let us take that away. But yeah, okay. So let's move on to your second question then. Is there a way for Spotfire to guess the data column type better? I have a numeric column's first 10K or 10,000 rows as NA, but the remainder is numeric. Spotfire would read this column automatically as a string rather than a numeric.
Yeah. So that part hasn't received any updates. However, when you are importing data into Spotfire, you can actually have another row and have that be designated as a data type row. So if you know that that column is numeric, if you're able to add another row into your data that simply says like string, 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 real, integer, etc., you can designate that one as a real number, and then you never have to worry about what Spotfire is reading the data as in the first 10,000 rows or so.
It doesn't quite work in databases because databases will store only that type. You can't store a string in a numeric column.
I see. In that case,
Jade, it might be worthwhile for you to point people while we're talking here at where the community is, because it sounds like another good one. And Jim, just so you know, there is a way to be able to go in to submit some of these. So obviously, you're always going to have access to support. And if I don't think we do your license renewal, so you'd have to contact TIBCO support directly. But the other place is there is extensive amount of information on the community as well, but then there's also the idea portal. So I don't know if somebody in Canada should have access to this, where you can actually submit suggestions. And we've talked to the product team in Sweden, and actually that's why there's the new features that we're seeing in 10.9, like having all the different measures that Jade was showing earlier. So maybe you want to just talk about this for a second, Jade?
Yeah, so the ideas portal is just ideas.tibco.com, and you don't need like an official account. You should just be able to create an account and sign in here and see the ideas that have been submitted or submit your own ideas. I believe the trust all scripts is in here somewhere. I've definitely seen it before. So if you come up with these ideas and it's not already in here, please feel free to submit it, because they do read this. They read every single one of these. I actually submitted something 2 days ago, and they responded to me within 24 hours about it. So they're really good at checking up in here. So it's just in the TIBCO community, and then there's a button to click on ideas. So if you're in the TIBCO community, go to ideas, or just go directly to ideas.tibco.com.
Okay, cool. And just because we're running short of time, Jim, you had one more question with regards to what's the best way to get multiple x-axis on the same plot?
That is my number one ask of Spotfire as well, actually. There is still no real good way for it. The best thing I can do right now is still having to use the lines and curves feature. So if I had a line chart in here, for example, I wanted to plot a second x-axis. If the data must come in, then I have to go under lines and curves and add another curve from a data table. So this is like for plotting type curves or forecasts on top of your production data. This is still where I would go for it if you're unable to have it in here. So that is my number one ask of Spotfire. I hope it comes out in version 11 or 10.10 or whatever the next release is going to be.
Awesome. Maybe anyone else have any other questions? You can either type them into the chat or you can just go off mute and ask. Okay. All right. Well, just being conscious of everybody's time, thank you for joining the first Dr. Spotfire. We'd like to do this more often as we see more releases coming. There is a TIPCO Now, which is the big worldwide conference, is scheduled for September. So I'm expecting that we'll see like a Spotfire 11, or if they follow the Samsung phones, it might be Spotfire 20 next. We'll have to wait and see. But something will be announced. We're already seeing for the folks that are on the call that use data virtualization, whether they're TDV or ADS, 8.3 is also going to be announced. But actually, just go back to the previous slide if you wouldn't mind, Jade. If you would like the information in the deck, feel free to reach out. Again, the email address is posted in the chat here. It's very simple, info@cadeon.com. And if you have feedback for us, we'd love to see it. We're always looking for feedback. There's a link here in the slides. Click the link and tell us what you think. And or for those of you, just reach out to us, and happy to bring more sessions like this and improve upon what we've done today. So with that, Jade, thank you very much for doing an awesome job, and thanks everybody for attending.